My name is Ginny Kent, and I know most of you. If I haven't seen you before, we've talked on the phone, we've exchanged emails, or we've been at meetings together. I've been here for about 12 years at the Cayuga County Chamber of Commerce. The Finger Lakes Grants Information Center is a program of the Chamber, and we're funded through the Chamber and through some other trainings that we do for which we can charge. You'll never get charged for this training. It's part of the relationship we have with the foundation. Everything that we do at the Finger Lakes Grants Information Center relates to the region. It's not specific to Cayuga County. So wherever you live, wherever you work, wherever you do your community service work, you're always welcome. Oops. Okay. So what are we doing here today? Well, there's somebody working on a proposal right there. I can get you a hint. We're going to explore some tips and best practices on how to organize, write, and submit a proposal to a foundation. And we're also going to go over some do's and don'ts of that process. They include the basic components of writing and submitting a project proposal. And we're also going to talk about what you do regardless of what the answer is. So some of you may have written proposals before, and some of you may have written proposals that were rejected. Some may have written proposals that were rejected or accepted.
Okay, you're saying foundations here, we may be applying for state aid, like from OMH or something like that. Is it the same process?
Very similar. A lot of times if you're applying for funding through a New York State or federal resource, they have very specific things that they're going to require of you. What we're doing today is we're going to be putting together the components of a proposal. And so if you create a proposal, it could sort of be a template, and there will be parts of it that make sense to you when you're filling that out. And sometimes you might get funding from a source and they say, you need a match before we'll fund you. So this comes in handy if you need a match, you might reach out to a private foundation. So nothing here will be wasted.
Okay, well, I'm just looking at the wording because these proposals, these grants are
This is general,
specific.
Yep, and this is going to be general. Because look at all the people around the world, we can't just take one area and focus on this. So we're going to talk in general terms today. So to begin the discussion, we're going to start looking at proposal writing as a whole. There are components that have to be included in every proposal that you prepare. So they include planning, research, writing, and follow-up. I'm going to go through very quickly here. Building relationships with donors and potential donors is also an important aspect. So planning is what you do, is about what you need the money for. A lot of times people come in here looking for funds, and when I say, well, what exactly are you looking for funding for? You just feel this overwhelming feeling like, oh, we have no money. Money for anything. It's really hard to focus on finding a good funder if you don't have any kind of a plan. So you have to kind of know exactly what it is you're looking for the money for. And you're going to do research that's going to help you determine which foundations to approach. So we have a foundation database here at the Chamber, about 160,000 private foundations listed on it, and we have profiles for each of those, and each profile has a mission statement or a statement of purpose. So you're going to find the ones that match your mission. So you kind of got to know what you're looking for. Then you got to write it. Who puts it together? Does one person put it together? Do you have different people in your organizations do different parts? And then you have to make sure that when you submit it, it has a unified voice. So if you have somebody doing the budget of a proposal that never meets the person that's doing the narrative, that's kind of a slippery slope, because people reviewing it are going to look for a connection between what you're doing in your narrative and what's reflected in your budget. And follow up. We're getting way ahead of ourselves here, but let's pretend you did and you heard about it. So what do you do once that decision has been made? So we're going to focus primarily on writing the proposal and the best way to follow up. We do have another workshop called Introduction to Finding Grants. Actually, we had it last week. But I will do it again, but in the meantime, if you go to this and you haven't had an orientation, you can make an appointment with me and we can sit down in our little room here with the computers and I can show you how to access that. So the important step in the proposal, first step, is planning. It's very competitive and you need to be prepared when you're approaching your funders. So getting started, you need to make sure you give yourself enough time to go through each step in the process so you can end up with a competitive proposal. Once you submit the proposal, they have their own process of reviewing it, and every foundation pretty much has its own process, its own calendar, its own guidelines for how they submit or how they review them. So, anybody want to guess how much time it takes to get funded by a foundation through a proposal?
3 to 6 months.
3 to 6 months. Anybody agree, disagree? Does that sound about right? More. Yeah. So generally 6 months to a year from the day you come in here. Now that includes your research, making those relationships with foundations so that you research and then you connect with them on how they want to receive their application. A lot of them, they're right on the website. It's very easy. They have their own timetable. So you may today do the research and find a match, like one that looks really good, but they don't accept proposals until July 31st. 30 days, whatever. Yeah, that's right. So a lot of things depend on, a lot of things will affect that timetable, but generally they say 9 months is probably average. It could take up to a year. Now for those of you that are trying to fund something in 6 months or 3 months, it doesn't mean you can't get funded. It just means that you're going to narrow that look to probably local places. That's when you start looking at, your big businesses or your local foundations. So they're going to probably be more sensitive to the needs of their local community. If you live in a place that has a community foundation, they may have a revolving, you can submit your application whenever, and they'll look at it and tell you in a few weeks what the answer is. But if you're looking for major funding, or you are a development officer in a big nonprofit, and you really have a whole year of fundraising planning and grant writing is part of that, so you're going to have a calendar that goes out through a year. And also, we want to know, what are you asking for? Whoops. I'm going to talk a little bit about this. Most places that are going to fund you are going to be looking for something interesting to fund. So they want to see a proposal that reflects something that can be measured. Because really they're investing their money in you. Many years ago it used to be they'd write you a check and they had done their thing. They have to give money away by law. But now they really look at it as a partnership. So you're sort of a steward of their money. So they want to know that proposal, and this is going to sound silly, but something as simple as giving a name to a project. I mean, you all talk about it in-house, you know what it is, but if you give it a name, give it a title, give it an identity, then funders that are reviewing your proposal are going to begin to sort of form an idea of a thing that then they can measure the success of. And you might have to be creative about that. Now, if you really need money for operating expenses, it doesn't mean you can't apply for operating expenses. If you see a foundation that covers that, that's fine. You can still talk about what you do. You can talk about the different programs you have. They're going to want to see that. If they're going to pay some of your bills for you, they want to make sure that you're a good program. You're a strong program. So we're going to focus on preparing a project proposal instead of just like a general budget for a whole nonprofit. So before you start writing, you need to know about as much about the funder as you can. because they're going to expect, especially nowadays, with the internet, they're going to expect that you did your research. You really need to know who you're talking to when you approach them for funding. So we ask funders what the number one reason is for rejecting a proposal. What do you think they say? If you say, why do you reject proposals? What do you think their number one reason is?
I'm interested.
Well, that's right. Why aren't they interested?
Because it's not what they want to get.
It's not the right fit.
Yeah.
It's literally, that's the most common reason to not give money. It just isn't the right fit. So again, that goes back to why it's important to make sure you know what they're looking for. You know the kind of projects they want to fund. So they're looking for a mutually beneficial relationship. They want a proposal that is going to be a win-win. Make sure I covered this here. And you can find that out by looking at the proposal or the funders' profiles. And actually, last but not least, I want to mention that the why is just as important as the who. Meaning that once you've identified a list of potential prospects, you need to tell them why they should care about your project or your program based on their needs. How is your project that they're going to fund going to help them achieve their goals? This is a huge example, but I know the Gates Foundation is very interested in water security all over the world. It's a global cause. So, you know, you have a project that relates to that, you can point right to that being why this is important. Because if you fund this work, it's going to help you move your goal forward. And you can find that in the information about the foundation. We're going to take a quick look at the planning and research. Now that we've taken a quick look at the planning and research, we're going to put it all together and talk about the components of a successful and effective proposal. So we're going to talk about the format. And as you can see here, it mentions online proposals, online formats. So the most important thing is to submit the proposal the way the foundations are asking you to do it. A lot of them are going to online formats, and there are similarities to them, but they're also different for every organization. No matter what they require, the types of questions that foundations ask you in the proposal process are going to be similar. It's also important to note that some will not have any kind of a format at all. They'll just list things they want you to send them. Usually smaller foundations will do that. So you have to figure out the format for them. And that's one of the benefits of talking about this today, because we are going to talk about a format that's very general, that would be acceptable to anybody that didn't have a structure that you wanted to, that they wanted you to go through. Either way, I'd recommend putting this, I'm going to call it the boilerplate today, a boilerplate proposal. You can use it for various components of other proposals. So if you are writing a proposal now for a certain program and you're tasked with doing another proposal for another program, there's going to be core information in it that you can adapt and use. So I know it seems like if you're really busy, a lot of work to sit down and write a proposal for whatever, but if you are just answering the questions and writing the proposal, it gives you that resource to use later on, and it also can come in handy if you're approaching a foundation that is not accepting applications. A lot of foundations that give a lot of money away, they will say, we don't accept unsolicited applications. So then you have to really do your research. If somebody has said to you, this was a great fit for your organization, you really should pursue them. So by having a boilerplate proposal with information pulled together, It's going to help you if you call that place and are going to be answering questions, whoever you ask or whoever you speak with, or if they say, you need to send us a letter of inquiry before we will approve your proposal request. So again, that can be sort of pulled out of a boilerplate proposal. So again, just always follow the funder's guidelines. Now there are basic elements to a standard proposal. The executive summary, I'm just going to read these. The narrative, which is the largest section of your proposal, and that describes the statement of need, the proposed project, your organizational history, background, and finally, the conclusion. You're also going to need a budget along with other supporting materials. We're not going to cover very much about the budget at all today. I would strongly recommend that you take tomorrow's class if you haven't signed up for it. And if you can't come to it, it'll be on YouTube. But we're going to cover tomorrow the basics of developing a budget, including support materials. And I might mention this again, but I just want to say, whenever you approach a project that you're going to be looking for funding for, create a timeline. Because the timeline not only informs how you're going to move along with your project, but when you sit down to develop the budget, everything you mention on the timeline may have an associated need for money or for in-kind. So it may just look like you're going to recruit volunteers to help you run a program. Well, how are you going to recruit the volunteers? Well, you're going to have informational sessions at different places. Well, are you going to have refreshments at those informational sessions? Are you going to send out a mailing to invite people to come to them? Everything that you write down may have a expense associated with it. So those all can be funded if you include them in your budget. So the narrative that we're talking about today and the budget that we'll be talking about tomorrow really have to talk to each other throughout the whole process. So in order to write an effective proposal, you must be able to make a compelling case for support. A grant is an investment, and with any investment, the funder is looking for a high rate of return with a low risk. Anybody want to guess what that might mean? A high rate of return with low risk.
They want to see good results without spending a lot of money for
You got it.
nothing.
That's exactly it. It's an investment a grant is an investment in your organization, as we talked about before. And whatever the issue is that you're addressing for your constituents, the community, a low risk means that you're capable of carrying this out in the most efficient way possible. And effective too. It's got to be effective. So with that in mind, here are the questions that most, if not all, of funders will want to know the answers to. What specific need are you addressing? This tells the funder what problem you're trying to solve and why they should care. It's not enough to simply state the problem. You're going to need to back it up with supporting facts and statistics. Make sure your facts are relevant to the specific population and community. If you're looking to fund a program that's a collaboration between an after-school program and an elementary school, and it involves seniors, and you're trying to increase literacy in the early years, don't put a lot of statistics about U.S. education. The specifics should really relate to what you're asking for. Local specifics at literacy rates, graduation rates would make sense, but even state level might be too high, and it just looks like filler if a funder is reading through. Because remember, the reader of your application may have 82 of them to go through before 3 o'clock. So if they sort of feel like they're in the weeds, they're going to move on to the next one. Sounds so harsh, but sometimes it's true. So no matter how serious the problem is, though, make sure you don't make it sound so grave that it's impossible to solve. And if you think about problems in society, some of them just seem overwhelming. And if you're in a community that has a lot of poverty and you're trying to address food security or homelessness or a very important topic, just be careful to make sure the way you frame your ask is positive and is realistic. Because you want them to feel like this is something they could actually make a difference with you on. Make sure it fits the size and scale of your solution. So make sure what you're asking for makes sense with what you're trying to do. Sometimes you kind of get lost if you're reading sample proposals or talking to other people, trying to pick up language to use. It can get kind of confusing. So it's good to kind of, again, I'll say this again, but have somebody else read your proposal before you mail it off, definitely. Talked about this. So, the project description is definitely the longest and most detailed section of your proposal, which makes sense. We're going to describe exactly how you plan to address the issue you raised in the needs section with measurable outcomes, which can be tricky, figuring out how to measure the success of what you're doing. So this section we're in now, the project description, usually begins with a statement of project goals and objectives. People and even funders use terms differently, but for our purposes today, we're going to say the goals are broad, general statements of what you plan to accomplish. Those are the goals. They're broad. They're big. The objectives flow from the goals, and they are specific and measurable within a reasonable time frame. Does that make sense? Goals are big, and then the objectives flow from the goals. Some people use the SMART acronym over there. Sure, everybody here has seen it at least once in their lifetime, but it's a good, concise way to sort of describe objectives as specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, within a defined time frame. And you should also, when you're writing your description, know what else is going on in the area being done by similar organizations. Funders talk to each other, they generally know what's going on, and with some of the tools you have now, with just a click of a button, they can see other organizations within your area that do similar work and how they're being funded. So, and it can be tricky because a lot of the work being done sort of overlaps. There's a lot of collaborations within counties. They're all over the place. So you have to sort of give similar organizations a pat on the back and an acknowledgement, and you're also going to talk about what you're doing and how it helps the population you're serving and how you work with these other organizations. Especially if you're both going for similar funds. You know, it's sort of good to kind of be respectful of the other work being done and other groups doing similar work. It makes sense. So you just, funders want to know you know what's going on, basically. So your project description should also detail the particular methods you're going to use to implement the project. In other words, what are your specific strategies for accomplishing your goals and objectives? This section will detail your plan of action, which should clearly explain the who, what, where, and how of your strategy. How will your plan be implemented? Who is going to do the work? And again, I think of the budget. So if you start writing down people who are going to do the work, well, are they volunteers? Are you paying them? Have you got an executive? How much time in your executive's work is going to be dedicated? Are they 10%? So this all could be monetized in your budget. What's going to happen as a result of the work? Where will it happen? When will it happen? Is this going to take, are you asking for funding for a project or a program that's you're going to measure in a year? Or is it going to be 2 years? And so the other thing is that you're asking for funding, usually there's a timeline. You just don't ask for funding forever. We're going to have this program, we're going to measure it in a year and then reassess it. So we're asking for funding for the first year of the ABC program or whatever it is. In addition to a well thought out description, you should also have the timetable and step-by-step plan showing how it will be executed and completed. Be sure you also emphasize collaborations. I just mentioned knowing what's going on in the community, whether or not they're doing work similar to yours. Mention those collaborations and partnerships. Funders really value that because, again, they're investing in you. They want to make sure that you're looking out the bottom line and looking where you can make partnerships to help, save money, save resources, or share resources. Along the same lines, if you believe that your project is replicable and can be a model for others, talk about that. So maybe you're doing intervention work that involves social workers, and there's another agency doing similar work, but you're doing a special program that involves more staff. It's sort of experimental. You've got to research to back it up, and so it's going to be more expensive. So you're asking for more money than one would think. So you explain why it's different and why your outcome is you're hoping your outcome will be much better. So as long as you explain what you're doing, even if it seems expensive, funders like that. It might get them sort of excited about a new approach to whatever the project is. The other thing I want to say about replicability, I'm going out on a limb here, but you might have something that's really unique that just was a brainstorm, and it could really change things. Down the road, you might be able to actually use this as a way to help your sustainability. If you can go present in other places about this model that you've developed, and you can charge for that, and you can bring people in and talk to them about the work you're doing. Again, that's exciting for funders to be involved in sort of the beginning of a new and exciting, innovative approach to a problem or an issue, or just something new and different, whatever the field is. So, let's see here. How do you know if you're successful? Anybody want to guess how you know if you're successful, generally?
They mail you a check.
You get the money. What'd you say? You get
I said they mail you a check.
They mail you a check. So how will you evaluate your project? That's what they're talking about. How will you evaluate your project? It's an important question, and your funders are all going to want to know that. If I give you this money, how are you going to be able to tell me it worked? That my investment was a good idea? That you used the money wisely?
Some places require specific information as to what you did with the money. And not only what you're going to use it for, but they want a dollar by dollar count of how it was spent.
Especially government
Yes.
funds. Some places will just say to you, send me, keep me posted and send me a report in a year that answers these 5 questions, and that's all they want. But they all want to know what happened. If they don't, and some of them don't, in fact, I can think of a couple local ones that really don't have a formal way of requiring a final report of any kind, it's still a good idea to send that out. We just want to thank you again for funding us for $500 or $5 million, whatever it is. This is what we did with it, and by the way, I'm enclosing a brochure and some pictures, and we're so happy that you support us.
along that line. It wouldn't hurt you to send one out even if you get rejected. Just
We're gonna-
thank you for looking at it. I'm sorry we didn't work out, so
Yep. You're absolutely right.
appreciate you taking the time to
Wait.
look at my profile.
And actually, we'll talk at the end about if you get rejected, and that's exactly what, it's all about developing relationships. You don't want to hound them, but, we get it. We're going to try again when you open the round for the next proposals, and thank you, and can you help us, tell us how we could improve it next time? We'll talk a little bit more about that. So, as mentioned earlier under goals and objectives, you must start by specifying your program's objectives in measurable terms. Once you've done that, you can identify key indicators of success based on your goals and objectives. Some things are easier to measure, let's face it, they just are easier to measure than others. It's easy to measure how many people a food bank serves versus how you measure the success of a mentoring program for teenage girls. So if your goal is to raise the self-esteem of teenage girls, how would you go about measuring that?
Survey before, during, after.
What would you survey?
The participants
And you'd ask them,
about self-esteem.
right, okay, yeah. So, actually, you're exactly right. There's two different ways to really measure it. There's the quantitative measurement of a program that tries to raise the self-esteem and make a more positive introspection, self-esteem for girls would be what happened to their absenteeism, detention, tardiness. How many times did you have to send them down to the principal's office? Has there been a decrease in that during this time you've had these, whatever these different actions are? So there's also the qualitative. These are more subjective. They're stories and anecdotes. They're quotes from teachers, from parents. You might have the girls doing a journaling, which is really powerful. It's a great thing to do anyway. Peer discussion group, just observing, seeing if they're more involved in the school, they have more friends around them, or they're more comfortable in their own skin. So you get the idea. There's different ways to measure outcome. You just have to know it ahead of time and put it in your proposal. And the other thing is, if you put all this in your proposal and you decide to do it differently, that's something you could inform your funders about down the road. Especially if it's a big project and you're probably going to have a contact person at the foundation that you're in touch with or you can ask questions of. It depends on what they're going to ask for at the end. They may not get this picky. So once you've decided and defined how you're going to measure, you can come up with the methods on how you're going to collect the data and analyze your activities. And also, you wanted to put that on a timeline. Put that on a timeline for monitoring the success of the program. Don't just try to do it at the end. Because there's some things, if you are, we'll use the same project for the self-esteem of the young girls. If you're trying something and you're getting feedback from the social worker or the teachers or the counselors, this really isn't working, you can change it. You can change it during the process and just note it for your own edification moving forward. There is a resource called TRASI, and I will show you that when we're finished here. I'm afraid if I get off this, we'll get off on a tangent. I want to stay on the schedule. But if you just Google TRASI Foundation Center, or Bing, or whatever you use, it will take you to it. And they have a lot of resources for measuring outcome. The other resource, the best one I've seen, is Kellogg Foundation. They used to make this available just on their website. Anybody could access it, and it may be password protected now, I can't remember. But they have a good one, and I'll look at that later on, and if it's, I think I saved it as a PDF, so I'll send it out to you if you can't just click on it. Just some ideas. Even if you have a pretty good system, it's good to kind of check it out once in a while. So at some point in your proposal, you'll need to give the reader information. The reader is the person that works at the foundation who's reading it. I don't know if I've said it before, but so let me just say quickly that what happens, especially with bigger foundations, is they have a deadline. So all of the proposals come in, and they will have readers. So each reader, it might be board members, depending on the organization, it might be staff, it might be the actual person that is the head of the whole, it might be the funder himself or herself. They will split them up and they'll each read them. And they're going to decide which one of those they move forward to the committee that's going to make the decision. So when I say reader, that's the first person I'm talking about. You'll need to give the reader information about your organization as a whole. You can do this at the beginning or the ending of the proposal. This is where you talk about your mission and the organizational history along with other programs and services, your accomplishments, your reputation, your visibility in the community, your track record for success. And when I say visibility in the community, I mean if you are on the golf course or at Wegmans or wherever, if somebody were there and they said, what do you think of, oh, I heard you are on the board for this museum. What's going on with them? What do you think of it? There should be a positive vibe. When people talk about your organization that you're either on the board for, or you represent, or you work for, they should be saying really exciting things in the community about you. It's good to know. I mean, it's really good to know. And if you know that there's some stuff out there, then you can work on improving it through your board and through your clients, your customers, your staff. If you are not, so some of you haven't been around for a long time. You don't have a track record yet. You don't belong to a national organization. So for you, it's your story that's going to be compelling. You might want to go into a little bit more detail because you're all going to have to submit your board, your board members. And I would suggest you submit your board members and what they do or what their expertise is. So you might have an attorney. It depends on parents, stakeholder representatives from the population you're serving. But if you're new, put those board members down and maybe say a little bit more in your narrative about the development of your organization. And you could say that we're doing something that hasn't been done before or whatever it is that makes you unique. Let's see. Thanks for that. So what do funders really want to know? Oh, there it is. They might be happy to give you a check, but they don't want to give you a check next year, the year after, and then you ask for more, the check, bigger check. They want to know how you're going to sustain yourself in the long run. Before funding your project, they may be concerned about what happens after the grant period ends. What are you going to do then? No foundation is going to fund you forever. Now, somebody in the past has said to me, yes, they are, because mine has funded me for many, many years. That can happen. But actually, that organization is now being folded into another organization. So you always have to have other resources besides just one funder. You have a business plan. So even if you're a nonprofit, you're still a business. So what is your plan? What is your fundraising plan? Do you have a donor list? Do you have a membership program? Do you have somebody working on your behalf to help people think about a bequest? A lot of times what will happen is, I don't know, someone on the library board, but sometimes we'll get a wonderful check from somebody we never heard of at the library here in town. Not as often as we would like. I mean, no, that sounds terrible. I'm just saying that people will leave us in their will, and we're not really sure how that happens sometimes. Well, when people sit down with their attorney to talk about their will, they, sometimes this 85-year-old man or woman might say, well, I'm not really sure. I do have a little money, and I don't know where to put it. Well, it might be the attorney that says, well, how about the library? Oh yeah, I love the library. That's a great place. Give it to them. So some organizations, it might behoove them to sort of think about all these different ways to fund your organization and sustain your organization down the road. And the stronger that looks to the funder, the better. Now, you don't want to make yourself look like you're wealthy. Why am I funding you? You're good. You've got way too much money. But you want to say, I'm not expecting you to do everything, but I really need help in this project or for this year or right now. Because guess what? If this works out, in 2 years you can go back to that funder, show them what you did, and then you get another project, and they'll be like, yeah, I like those. Remember those people? They sent me that card that was really cute. We put it on the wall. There is a workshop I do once a year called anybody go to that, Developing a Fundraising Plan? Yeah, I did it a few months ago now. So that's sort of an overview of some of the things I just talked about. So this is the conclusion, not the conclusion here, don't leave. The conclusion of the part of the proposal. So this is an important part of your proposal. It should end with a compelling conclusion which speaks to why this particular funder should fund your project. It doesn't have to be long, a paragraph or two should do it. Your goal here is to answer the so what question. If this project is funded, how will life be better? And for whom? For the community? For who? Why are you doing this work? Why should this funder care? And how is this going to be mutually beneficial? How does this, again, support the purpose of the foundation? So there are two things that foundations look at very carefully before they really seriously consider funding a proposal, an organization. One is the executive summary, the other is the budget. If those two things please them, then they're going to read all that other stuff we just talked about. So, and actually, there's a book, I didn't bring it in here, it's in the little room, but this woman talked to, or she researched like 6,000 foundations in the country for the Foundation Center, and she wrote a book about it, and she said a lot of the executives look at the budget first. The readers, like the committee members, look at the executive summary. The budget is critically important. And again, I'm not going to go over it today, but it's a critically important component. So the executive summary is one of the most important parts of the proposal. You want it to catch their attention. Most people who write proposals find that it's easier to write your proposal, full proposal first. And then you extract the key information and put it into a one-page summary. That's your executive summary, 1 page. It should have, let me see. It should have, I thought there was a slide for this, but there isn't. It should have a statement of need, a brief description of your project, including your goals and objectives. Information about your organization as a whole, and how much money you are asking for.
Can you say something more again?
A brief description of your project, including goals and objectives. It says 1 page, but honestly 2 pages is fine. It's really hard to get all this on 1 page. So it's something you put on top, like at the beginning of your proposal, you put it on top of the project description, but it's something that you probably should be writing last.
Thank you.
So, and again, I'm not going to show you how to do that. That's really about, finding a sentence or a small paragraph for each of those areas. The other thing, I mentioned this before, that executive summary. So when you're researching your funders and you find that they don't accept applications, you have to write a letter of inquiry. That's just about your letter of inquiry right there. Your executive summary for a boilerplate proposal tells everything they want to need and see if they're going to be interested in learning more about you and funding you.
So send that for the because most of where I've found, they do ask for letter of inquiries. So just send that.
Well, I mean, it would be a letter, but
Right.
it would be like,
It'd be- yeah. But that would be,
that would pretty much be it, because that's what you're doing. You're really saying, this is who we are, this is what we want
Yeah.
funded, and here's how much money we're asking for.
okay.
So yeah, it's pretty similar. Like if you find letters of inquiry that kind of look like this would, it's pretty similar.
And that's going to an organization that is not.
Isn't accepting.
They're not accepting, okay.
Right. And they may not be accepting because they don't have a staff to handle it, or because they're too big, so they have it broken down into programs, and they just want you to go through this process. So when they say not accepting, they may just send you to their website and you fill out a form on there, or click what you're interested in, and then go from there. And when you're searching, you can actually select only foundations that are accepting and just look at those, so you don't keep saying, this is perfect, and get to the bottom and it says not accepting applications. But I usually leave it on because sometimes a really good match is one that isn't accepting, and so you want to kind of leave that door open. So supporting materials, along with your proposal, you're going to need to send a number of documents. Your letter of determination from the IRS to prove that you're a legal nonprofit. If you're not a legal nonprofit, then you need to find a fiscal sponsor. That would be another 501c3 that has a similar mission. A lot of times places that aren't sure they want to go through the whole nonprofit route, or that they're in the process, they need the money now and they haven't gotten their paperwork yet, can go down that road.
If you do that, you need to write an MOA.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, because
We're
yeah.
having to do that.
Right. So you have to have your 501c3. Foundations are required by the IRS to give to charitable organizations for charitable purposes. They cannot give to a for-profit. They can't give to you personally. It has to be a 501c3 nonprofit. I want to just mention a website, grantspace.org, has more information on this. You do have to now, they're wanting you to sign up, it's free. They've always had a login option, but now I guess that they want everybody to do it, so that, I don't know. Analytics, they want to make sure people are using their website, I guess. But that is the Foundation Center website. The funder's also going to want your financial documents, along with your proposal budget, such as a audited statement. If you're small, new, you don't have, you're not big enough to have an audited statement, and they require one. This is where I just want to mention that you should have a relationship with somebody at this foundation. I would strongly discourage you from just mailing in something or filling something out and having those people open it up the deadline, and be like, who are these people? So it's good to have a relationship with the places you're asking money for. And so, for example, if you're small and you're like, hey, Lisa, it's Ginny, I just have a question about the financials. You know, we don't have our CPA doing an audit. We don't really have a small budget. And, oh, okay. So she might say, we'll just write a little note on there. Okay. So, two things. Have a relationship with the place you're applying to. And it might be all online. It might be a huge foundation and the relationship is clicking. But they do want, you know, I mean, years ago I was involved with a nonprofit, many years ago, and we were applying for money, and they just said, have somebody outside of your board review your budget. You know, somebody that's like a a friend that's an attorney or something and just sign a thing saying they looked at it, made sense to them. They were happy. They're also going to want your board of directors, we mentioned that before, provide names along with their professional affiliations, because they want to look and see if your board is responsible. Because they really want to fund a strong nonprofit that knows what they're doing. So if you are a nonprofit organization that works with children, well, who on your board has some relationship in some way, shape, or form to the needs of children, or legal, or medical, or whatever? Just over time, make sure that you have that representation. It's hard when you're starting out to get everything aligned on your board. It's also a good idea to supply brief biographical information on your key staff members to point out once again that the people carrying out your project have the knowledge and experience for it to be successful. Now again, you may not be called on to supply this, but it's a good idea to know that's something that might be helpful. So the main thing here is to include everything they ask for and very little of anything else. If they're not asking you for videos or for now arts, of course they're going to want it's totally different for arts and culture organizations. But if they're not asking for a lot of other things, don't supply it, or at least ask them if it's okay, if it's something you're interested in. For online applications, certainly add links. If they want to click on it, look at additional information about your organization, that's fine. Help them. So you can refer to things you have in your proposal, for more information, video clippings, more, please contact me. So you may have a lot of stuff, but just don't load it up into a box and send it to them unless they're asking for it. So you want to make sure that your proposal is legible, easy to read, no typos. Just so everybody know what a typo is. I'm being a little facetious. Really hard to read your own work and proofread your own work. It's almost impossible. I don't care. I cannot do it. I cannot do it myself. Somebody else has to read my work all the time. I just don't see it. So before a proposal gets submitted, have somebody who knows what you do but isn't intimately involved in the process of the proposal read through it. And ask them specifically, if there's something you're a little bit worried about, you might say, does the narrative relate to the budget? I mean, just like if you're reading it, does it make sense? When you read the budget, does it make sense? Or you really want that common voice. You want it written in a common theme. So you might have, if you're at an agency that has a lot of departments, you might have, the financial stuff done by one person, and the person that's actually going to run the program does the core of it, and you've got somebody else writing the narrative of the organization. And if it looks like it's in different languages, that's really hard for somebody who's got a lot of these to go through, to kind of like, wait, now they're using third person, I'm confused. So just somebody else. In fact, ideally, if you're actually submitting this, give yourself a fake deadline of a week earlier than the real deadline. Like anybody can do that. And then put it aside for a couple days and leave it alone. Then take it out and then read it and have somebody else read it and then submit it on time. So the other thing is that you're going to know what they want. Most places now just want one form. They just want one copy. But check and see if that's all they want is the one copy. And send them. I mean, this, again, a lot of these are going to be online or whatever. But if you are mailing a hard copy in, use binder clips, not staples, or traditional paper clips. Your binder clips are the ones that, where's a binder clip? It's hard to describe a binder clip. It's like a pincher instead of a paper clip. Thank you. Technical visual. Yeah, see there it is. It's just, right. People don't know. They use them. They don't know what they call. It's hard to describe them. Well, okay. Here we go. You submitted your proposal. You've done everything you can. Now you just relax. It's done. So you're going to just wait if you get anxious because you're not hearing from them, you could call and ask if they have everything they need. Is there anything else that you could send them? But don't bug them. You know, if it's like within the time, it's a couple weeks and it's 3 weeks, I'd call and just making sure there wasn't something you were waiting for. Well, congratulations. Yay. The answer is yes. You got your grant. You did everything right. A little luck. You received notification the project is approved for funding. And you'll usually receive a grant agreement letter from the funder before you receive the actual check. Not always, but that's often how they do it. To review, sign, and send back to the funder. That's a good time to do a little thank you letter, thank you card, express your appreciation, and tell them again, quickly, you know, in a very concise way, how that money is going to help make a difference to the people you serve in your organization, your community. Receiving a grant, however, is not the end. It's the beginning of a new relationship if you haven't been funded by these people before. You are now partners with this funder. And during the course of the grant period, you're going to want to make sure they're informed. And so you should learn that, how they want to be informed. Most of the time, they'll just tell you. So it might be at the end, you know, fill out this form or send me information on these 3 things. And as I said before, make sure that they are aware of any milestones during the process. If you have a clipping in the paper, if you get an award, whatever, send it to them. It's not, you know, they're going to put it in a file. They're going to look at it and put it in a file or stick it on their corkboard or whatever. But it really keeps you sort of in the back of their mind. And down the road, you might need to come back to them again for more funding. I mean, some of these places will fund you every year, but it might not always be the same amount, and they may, you know, they might take a few years off or whatever. So just keep them, you know, make sure that you're in their heart. Let me see here. So you just make sure you send in all the required reports, send them in on time. And if you're having a reception, make sure you invite them, even if they're in Chicago. You know, I'm not going to pay for you to come, but I'd like to see you. And then, you know, sometimes it's no, and actually 1 out of every 3 funders will say yes if you're lucky, and the other 2 will send out no's. So don't ever take it personally, because absolutely more proposals are denied than are funded. But you can find out why. I mean, it's so frustrating to not know why, especially if you've done all this work and tortured everybody in the office and had people read it, and you feel that you've done the best job you could. So find out if you can, but do it graciously. Some funders will not ever give you a specific reason. They'll just say, it wasn't the right fit. But you can at least say, can I apply again? You know, and if I apply again, would you be able to help me do a better job? Because remember, they need to find good partners for their money. They really do want to invest in you because it helps them to have a good partner. Imagine if you had to give away $50 million. It's a real pain to find all these places that are good matches for you. You're helping them. So keep them informed of your good work. Let them know the progress you're making. Don't harass them. But you could send them a couple things just to kind of keep in mind. And actually, you may have to go out and fill out some other grant proposals to make that up, but that's okay. You know, they might say, wow, look at this great, incredible program. We missed the chance to fund this. But look, they're doing really well. Well, you can go back next year and say, you know what? We're going to give you another opportunity to be our friend again. We're going to ask you for money again this year. So anyway, if no is the answer, no is the answer. Don't beat yourself up over it. Move on. There's other places to go. Don't think that you can't be funded simply because They said no. I mean, sometimes it's just there's too many people asking for a small amount of money. And the more people there are asking, the pickier they have to be. They have to really be strict about what they're looking at. So, key takeaways.
I have a question. What happens if you submitted a number of proposals to different foundations, and they come back yes?
Well, when you do your budget, your proposal, your budget for your proposal, you're going to list where you're expecting funding from. So, first of all, because especially locally, the funders all know each other, all the foundations talk, they know what's going on. So if you were asking, I'll pick on, like if you were asking the Allen Foundation for $5,000, and you were also asking Emerson Foundation for $5,000, you would want to put both of those in your budget plan. And one of the questions a lot of times they will ask you in a proposal, we can go over here, but it will be, what's going to happen if you don't get the money? And that's something that you really should think about as you develop this. Again, it goes back to sustainability, and you really can't just depend on one resource. So it might mean that you have to limit the number of programs you're going to be running this year, or you're going to have to not hire a part-time person to do X, Y, Z. It doesn't mean they won't fund you. It just means that they want to know what's going to happen if you don't get all the money that you're expecting. So I would just encourage you to fund, use the plan to totally fund your program, but also think about what's going to happen if you don't get funded by the one you're asking or the other one that you listed. Did that answer your question? Oh, ask it again.
Well, say you're not sure you're going to get, say it's a lot of money.
Right.
And one foundation you were counting on says no, but you've got this other one that's in the works to help save on a timeline to move things forward. And the other one, and he said yes. I mean, you're taking a chance using the same proposal going to the same foundation, and then they both come back saying yes. That would, I don't know what.
Oh, so the question might be, what if you get too much money?
Yeah.
We take some.
Anybody here not taking?
Spread it around.
There is actually an answer to that. I'm sorry. Yes, that makes sense. The answer to that is you decide what you would like to do with the money, and then you say to, and I can't know the details of this right this minute, but you would say you get funding that you don't need. I'll look at it differently. Let's just say you got funded to buy a whole new computer tech system. $10,000, $5,000, whatever it is, and probably be unrealistic for $5,000, but anyway, and then somebody donates it, and you've already got the check. Do you give it back? So, or you get funded by too many people. First of all, don't lose sleep over this being a problem, really. If it happens, you can go to the foundation. They do not generally want their money back. I'm being general. They don't want their money back. But if you go to them and say, I have a problem, it's a good problem, I wanted to talk to you about it. We've been funded, we actually have a surplus in funds for this year, and I want to do the right thing. Would you like us to send it back to you? Or would you like us to invest it in this thing here that I wasn't going to do till next year, but now we might be able to get started on it thanks to my good fortune. So have a plan. Just like you have to have a backup plan if you don't get funded, you have a backup plan if you get too much money. So yeah. I mean, if it's, trust me, it probably will not be a huge problem. But, I'm sure you have other things you could spend that money on. So, you can say, I'm good. I'm not going to be bugging you for more money for another 2 or 3 years. So, yeah. It is a good question. So, key takeaways. Start with an outline. That will help you better organize your thoughts and pinpoint the key things you want to say. I also say timeline, outline. Everybody has their own. Some of them do it on the computer, some write it on line paper. Have a plan. Start with an outline. Keep your language clear and concise. Avoid jargon. If it's a specialty, if you are doing something with intervention, the people reading your proposal may not understand it, so try to stay away from jargon if you possibly can. And try not to use acronyms. If you do use them, at least once, say what they are. Finger Lakes Grants Information Center, and then I put FL, whatever it was, GIC, behind it. Tell a compelling story through your narratives. It'll just, it'll emerge as you write, because you'll be thinking about the topics and, the people that you're serving or how things have changed. So tell a compelling story and make it persuasive. Focus on their interests. Remember, when you're writing to a foundation, you want to focus on what's important to them, not just your own. Know who you're approaching and why you're approaching them. Follow their guidelines, always, always, always. Whatever it is they want, give it to them. And finally, be sure to revise and edit before submitting your proposal. That isn't actually final, there are a couple others. One of them is, when you submit your proposal, have a copy of it, a hard copy if you can. These online ones, sometimes you can't. And put that, seal it away, put it in an envelope and say actual proposal that was submitted on this date. Because what happens is, you'll send it in, it'll be great, and then you're going to use that and pick that apart for other proposals that you're developing. And then all of a sudden you don't have a complete story of that day that you sent that proposal, and instead you've got this is under the couch in the middle of the magazine, you printed it out, you saved it on the desktop, and now it's no longer the whole thing is in the file. So it's just good to have the actual proposal you sent in, one copy of it, in an envelope, sealed, and the other thing is, when you do have to submit the final report, it's good to be able to open that up and see what you actually said you were going to do. I know you did it all, but that day you wrote that, just remind yourself, because that's the only thing they got is that proposal you submitted. So it's just a good idea to do that. But as far as the workshop, we're finished. So if you do need to run out, you can, but I do hope to stick around and at least look at that room, and I'll show you those websites that we talked about.